Welcome back to the discussion. Today we're talking about the NITAAC contract guide that Federal News Network and NITAAC are putting together. My guests today are Brian Goodger, the Acting Director of the National Institutes of Health Information Technology Acquisition and Assessment Center, and the Associate Director for the Office of Logistics and Acquisition Operations at NIH, and Ricky Clark, the Deputy Director of NITAAC. Now, before break, we were talking about CIO-SP3, CIO-SP3 small business. We got both of those through. Let's move on to CIO-CS. This is a little bit different of a contract. It's still in the government-wide acquisition world. This is a hardware contract. And again, this is having another good year in 2021. So Brian, lead us off. Tell us a little bit about what CS is and what kind of year is it having so far?
Okay, thank you so much. So on the CIO-CS vehicle, we sell hardware. We sell IT products and peripherals, commercial items, laptops and desktops, ruggedized IT peripherals. There are 7 original equipment manufacturers or OEMs. There are 56 VARs or value added resellers. This vehicle has the cheapest fees in government at only 0.35 the delivery order contract amount. It's got a ceiling of $20 billion. We recently exercised the option, which is for an additional 5 years, which takes us from the spring of 2020 to the spring of 2025. And this vehicle is really positioned well to help our customers, agency departments, with fourth quarter buying, with extra money that they found somewhere that they need to get on contract, so not losing it back to the Department of Treasury. So one of the first things they want to buy are IT products. And while we do products as a service and some services on this vehicle, IT products, in particular laptops and desktops, are really the selling.
So you said the magic word there. You said we just exercised the option for another 5 years to 2025. All our vendor friends are going to ask us. So Brian, what's the plan for a follow-on? Don't you have that in planning mode yet? So I know it feels like it's 4 years away, but it's pretty close. And when it comes to government contracting,
it is. Yeah, that's a good point. We will start that recompete in January of 2023. So not too far off, and we'll have it done in time in the spring of 2025, and it will be another 10-year GWAC.
Now, similar to CIO-SP4, which, as I said to folks, we'll get to eventually, are you starting to rethink a little bit about how to reimagine CIO-CS, or is hardware, it's so different than services, the reimagining is not as complicated, if you will?
Well, the one thing in particular we're going to look at is, what's going to happen in industry 3, 5, 7 years from now, right? Nobody knows, but we want to allow for the expansion of future IT products, things we don't currently know about now. We call them emerging technologies. So the contract will allow for that kind of growth.
We're going to talk about the laptop desktop piece in a little bit as well, but what are some of the other trends you're seeing across CIO-CS and some of the big buying agencies? Who's coming to use the contract and who's taking advantage of it?
Really, everybody is, specifically again, the fourth quarter. But one of the things they look to for us is if they want a product that's not currently available on NITAAC, they can request it of us, and we could add it with our TRP, our Technology Refreshment Program, which is our ability to have our already existing contractors add new products within 24 hours onto the IDIQ, onto the vehicle for the government's use. We have 2 deployment methods. We have on-prem, meaning on-premise, and the second is managed services, including cloud. Those are big hits with our customers. We're constantly receiving positive feedback from them on those.
Can you talk a little bit more about that technology refresh program? I think that's an interesting piece. What have you seen vendors bring you or agencies ask for, and how does it exactly work?
Sure. So a request is made to NITAAC to add a specific product onto one of the contractors' onto their contract. And those normally consist of things that aren't readily available or something that is unique and wasn't previously on NITAAC. So you might have, for instance, Apple Macs. You might have a tablet. You might have the newest and greatest IT peripheral, something that's out in industry within literally the last couple of months. As quickly as the computers change and the computers are out of date, we want to make sure that the computers that are available on NITAAC are the latest and the greatest.
Brian, do you get those requests often? How often are you doing technology refreshes? I mean, is it every month, a couple times a year?
Quite frequently, a couple times a month at least, sometimes a couple times a week, specifically about this time of year, into the spring, leading into the fourth quarter.
It sounds to me like the type of thing where someone goes, it'd be really nice if we had this. They go to NITAAC, they look at CIO-CS and go, oh, it's not there. Hey, Brian, or one of your contracting folks, can we add this? And you guys are able to do it. It takes roughly how long to add a new piece of hardware?
We can do it within a couple days. It's miraculous how quickly we can do it. We want to make sure that we answer the call of the customer, so we can do it within a couple days.
And I think that's really a benefit, because when, as you well know, agencies sometimes have money that expires and they got to get it out the door. And if they got to wait 6 weeks or 8 weeks to add a product, they're going to go somewhere else or do an open market or not, or go without it. The other piece to this, and I think you mentioned, is there's a lot of fourth quarter buying, and there was a concern years and years ago. We won't go through it, about how to buying computers and buying just spending money to spend money. How do you work with the agencies to make sure they're really fulfilling a need? It's not your responsibility per se, but how do you work through this to make sure that they aren't, the money is being used the best way possible?
Well, the customer has to comply with bona fide need, right? They've got to establish a legitimate need for this fiscal year. And we're big in NITAAC, and the customer controls the requirement. We are a conduit, we are a vehicle, we are a bridge to fulfill their requirement. But their requirement is owned by them. And as long as they have it signed off by their appropriate authorities within their own internal agency, so budget officer, some type of chief contracting officer, some type of head of the program office, they are able to use the vehicle at their frequency and at the desire in which they are targeting certain socioeconomic categories.
In CIO-CS, you bring up the socioeconomic categories. That's a great point. This is both unrestricted and small businesses. Unlike CIO-SP3, which has a small business dedicated contract, this is a mix of contractors.
That's correct. And really the margin for profit for the private sector on computers isn't that great. What they're really looking for, and what we try to push, are bulk buys. Sometimes even to include tiered pricing. So large computer buys are really the sweet spot of CIO-CS.
Oh, you bring up that, and we'll get to the GSS piece in a second. But I got to ask, during the pandemic, how were you guys able to survive the rush for cameras, the rush for laptops, the rush for whatever else that we all needed to work from home?
Exactly. Very busy time for us. Luckily, we were able to answer the call, and that's primarily due to we have really good employees. We have really good federal employees. We have really great in-house contractor staff. We stay in touch with our customers. We understand their needs. We have IT folks who will go and research things and provide recommendations and be immediate responses to them to help them kind of flush out their requirements. And again, the ability to use the vehicle as a market research tool, where you can literally go on the vehicle and see pictures and specs of the computers, is so beneficial.
And I think that's another really important point to bring up. You all have some sort of catalog under CIO-CS. Yeah. It's we all love to make the Amazon comment. Oh, well, if you bought this, you may also like that. Walk me through what a typical, if I'm a user, what am I going to see?
Well, it's very Amazon-like. You can go on and see pictures of the computer, the make and model number, the specs, the weight, the dimensions of the screen, the RAM, the memory. Under a certain dollar value, you can literally point and click to buy the product because it's already been computed for you.
Ricky, let me just bring you into the conversation real quick. How important is that for a buyer to be able to see what they buy, right? We know we all want to touch and feel things, but walk me through the approach that NITAAC is taking under CIO-CS, how important that is to a buyer from your perspective as a buyer or a former buyer now.
I think for me, that's probably one of the most important facts as a buyer. If I'm buying something, like sometimes if I look at a catalog and there are no pictures, there's nothing I can relate it to. So if I'm able to see it and then also, pick up the phone and call the folks in NITAAC, and work through any concerns I may have, I think that's pivotal. I think that's perfect. That's another thing that when I pointed out earlier about how we go above and beyond for the exceptional customer service, that's just another example. It's almost like walking into a store yourself, pick up the phone and call, take a look at the pictures, and if it's something you need with the specs, or if it's something you're not sure about, then you get that feedback immediately.
Brian, again, I've asked you this question over the last couple segments. What's the message you want to take away, give to folks? And you've been very consistent, so thank you for that. When it comes to CIO-CS specifically, as we enter the fourth quarter buying, what's really key for agencies to keep in mind? What's key for them to ensure that they can meet their needs in a timely fashion, to get the money spent, to really ensure mission has the best and the greatest computers and hardware and software and hardware and peripheral requirements?
Sure. And in using NITAAC, you'll have quick, easy access to the latest in the IT trends and laptops and desktops and IT peripherals. You'll pay some of the cheapest fees in government. You can view the products off our website. You can review the specs. And then finally, and probably most importantly, if you need help, reach out to us and we will walk you through the process.
And I imagine your fourth quarter busy season is just starting to get started.
Yeah.
Do they have to get their orders in for CS earlier than normal, or what's a time frame they should really start to keep in mind?
No, that's not the case at all. We accept orders up until September 30th until midnight. In fact, we have seen some DoD customers late on September 30th pass the money from the East Coast to the Midwest, to the West Coast, to Hawaii, just so they have extra time with their end of fiscal year, 1 year money that's going to expire that they're trying to get on NITAAC. They just need a couple more signatures, or they can have just a couple more hours. We see that every year.
That always is interesting because it's not midnight East Coast time. It's
Right.
Midnight where you're at.
Wherever you are, exactly.
I always thought that was a great part of federal acquisition. Yeah. Brian, Ricky, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue our conversation. We'll bring in your other colleague, Erin, and she will talk to us about CIO-CS, the GSS part of it, the piece of it. You're listening to a discussion about the NITAAC contract guide that we're partnering with on Federal News Network.